Welcome back, witches! So it is officially spooky season and I am so excited for it. Halloween is me and my family's absolute favorite holiday. Don't get me wrong, we love the whole holiday season, but we go all out for Halloween. So in this video, I wanted to try something a little bit out of my comfort zone. I'm so excited to share with you guys the process that I did and the things I've learned along the way to make these adorable Sanderson sisters and Mr. Billy. Let's go ahead and get started. So to begin, I went to my local Dollar Tree and I found some of their little baby dolls that they have just in the toy section, and I picked up 4 of them. One for each of the Sanderson sisters and one for Billy. Now my original plan was to do a shadow box with them, so I also picked up 2 of the small crates that you can also find at Dollar Tree. I began the process by going ahead and unpackaging everything and pretty much getting it down to the bare minimum. This means removing the rubber bands from the hair, taking off its clothes and the shoes, and then I wanted to go ahead and clean them up really well. I used some acetone or some fingernail polish to try to remove the makeup on the face, but it didn't work. I also had some higher level alcohol and that didn't work either, so that's okay. I just went ahead and wiped down the entire body to make sure it's nice and clean. And then I'm going to paint over the face. So to do this, I'm just using my apple barrel paints that I have at home. They're cheap at Walmart. You can get them small bottles for 50 cents a bottle. I might not go through which actual colors I used in this. If you want to know, you can let me know down in the comments and I will try to give you an idea of what colors I used in the mixture, but it was kind of just a process of trial and error to do this. So after I got it all wiped down, I went ahead and mixed together my paints. I used, for their skin tone, I wanted to make them a little paler than they already were. So I used a mixture of white, this like lighter kind of tan color, like a peach color, and then just a tiny bit of a like khaki tan color, and mixed that together. And once I was satisfied, I went ahead and started to paint their faces. And I just took my time with this. I went around the edges of the hairline very slowly and very carefully. I did go all the way around to the back of their head to make sure everything was cohesive underneath their neckline, but I stopped where the neck met the head. Met the head? Yeah, where it would meet the head. So once I was done with that, I was worried about brush strokes showing through. I also have some of these little makeup sponges, so I took that and lightly dabbed that around on her face. And obviously it does pull up some of the paint that I put down, but it takes away all of the brush strokes and makes it look like a nice smooth finish. So I did that all over her face, and then I did that with the 3 other sister dolls. That did take multiple coats. I believe I did 3 coats on each face. And then I was ready to move on to Billy. Now for Billy, because you know he is living dead, I wanted to make his skin tone more zombie-ish looking, and I did that by taking the original color that I did for the sister's face, and I added a little bit of like this like limey, almost like booger green, and some yellow, and just mixed that up until I was happy with it. And then I went ahead and painted his face the exact same way that I did with them. I think I did 3 coats on him. First coat, used the makeup sponge to blot it, let it dry completely. Second coat, let it dry completely. I do have a heat gun that I'm using on low from a good distance to try to help it dry a little faster, because this process took a very long time from start to finish of the project. So it's definitely a labor of love, and if you want to give this a shot, make sure you allow yourself plenty of time to do it. You don't want to rush it, because then you won't get the end result that you're looking for. So once their faces were all done, I was ready to move on to their hair. Now my plan for this was again to use my acrylic paints. I was hoping that once it dried, if I shaped it while it was wet, that it would just stay in place, almost like a hairspray or a glue. So for Winnie's hair, I went ahead and kind of did like the 2 mounds that she has. After I was done painting it, I did equal parts of red and orange to give her that like bright fiery red hair that she's known for. And I just painted the entire hair. So this is very messy. use gloves. I didn't. I'm so used to having paint on my hands. Acrylic paint comes right off with no problem with a little bit of water, or even if it's dry and go like this, it crumbles away. So it's messy and it gets everywhere. If I were to do this again, I would go ahead and do the hair first and then paint their faces, because it was kind of hard to keep any blotches off their faces. I did have to go back and do some touch up. So if you have ever had a baby doll of any sort, you know that they have huge bald spots because it's just the look to make it look covered, but it's not really. So I went ahead and painted each of their scalps as well with the same color that I was doing with their hair. So I just painted it all up, did their hair, went very carefully around the edges of their head, and I did that until I was happy. I did have to, kind of part some of the strands and really get in there and move it every which way direction until I was satisfied. So then I moved on to Billy's hair, and for his, I wanted to cut off all of the curls from the baby doll because his is kind of like wild and all over the place. So I cut down all of the curls, and then I did take some hot glue and put some of those back onto his head to try to fill it a little more, since how it's shorter, it's not covering as well. This did help some. However, when I was painting and stuff, some of those chunks did come back out, but it did cover enough to where it didn't matter. So I did the same thing with him. I painted his scalp, his hairline, everything really good. Got in between all of those pieces of hair really well. And then at the end, kind of just scrunched my fingers all through his hair to make it nice and wild and crazy. And then left that one to dry. Then I moved on to Mary, and I did Billy's hair black. So then for hers, I added a little bit of dark brown just to change the tone just a little bit. But her hair is pretty much black as well. So I just painted it up, and then I used a rubber band to give her that nice high off the side kind of do that she has going on, and I just painted the rubber band the same color as the hair after that was nice and settled in. And then I did Sarah's hair. Now listen, I tried to be smart because once you have a baby doll, the hair's kind of stuck however it came. And I thought to myself, well, I have a heat gun. It's synthetic hair. It's basically plastic. I could just heat it up a little bit, and then I'd be able to stop it and kind of mold it how I want to. Now, let me tell you, that didn't work. Even though I held my heat gun back at a good pace, it still melted immediately. So then I had big chunks of plastic that I had to pull out of her hair, and then she was even more bald than when we started. But it is what it is. So I just made that work. I took her hair, and hers is down, so I pulled it over to the side and kind of hid those bald spots that I accidentally created. And then I was able to get it, the heat did work because I was able to kind of like move it and remold it down to the side. And I just put it in a side pony, and I think it looks really cute and turned out. And I just got really lucky that I didn't ruin it because it melted immediately. So don't try that at home, or if you do, stay way back, because I was probably, if this was the doll head, I was probably back here on low with my heat gun. Maybe a hairdryer would have been a better choice. I'm not sure, but in the end it worked out. And then I was ready to move on to their clothes. For their clothes, I'm going to try to reuse the dresses that they came in and just add fabric to it. So I was gifted a bag of lace and a whole bunch of strips of fabric, and I'm just going to use those to add on to their dresses to just kind of embellish them more and make them more substantial. So I'm doing that by just laying it across the dress to find out the length, cutting it off, and hot gluing it on to the bottom of the dress. And then from there, I did that for each of the three sisters, and from there I painted them the colors that I wanted. Now, for the colors, I was trying to just go based off of what the stores usually put them in. So if that makes sense, for Mary, you usually see them, they usually put her in some kind of plaid, even though in the movie she's not wearing any type of plaid at all. And they kind of just switch up the colors a little bit, but you know what it is, so it doesn't make you think too hard about it. So I just went with the colors that I found online of different toys that they have, and they're all kind of similar. And then I decided I didn't like that. So, especially for Sarah, I did a purple and orange, but it just wasn't working out. And I consulted with some friends and family to kind of see what they thought, and we decided to change the color. So after I got them all, the dresses all painted up with their skirts, make sure you lift it, You can either paint it before you attach it, which is probably easier, but I was worried with the paint, you know, how it hardens everything, that it was going to make it too hard to bend and shape it the way I wanted to. So I just put a piece of cardboard underneath to lay it flat and paint on top of it, and painted each of their outfits. Once those were dry, it was time to get fitted and altered, just like any witch would. So I went ahead and put the dresses back on, velcroed it in the back, and then any extra material, I cut that off and made sure it all kind of fit the way it needed to. And now that their hair is nice and firm and in place and they have their little outfits on, I am realizing that they are almost too substantial now and they don't fit in the little boxes that I got for them. So we are going to table that idea for a minute because I wanted to do these little shadow boxes with a little scene. At normal size, they all three fit in there, and then I was going to have Billy on the second one. That didn't work out. That's okay. I'm so happy that didn't work out because it turned out way better than I think it would have if I would have gone that route. So after that, it was time for Billy's outfit. Now, let me tell you, this is completely out of my comfort zone. I have to have understandings of like seams and patterns and things that I am clueless on and don't really have any experience with other than random Halloween costumes that I've done in the past. So for him, I took the doll dress that it came with and I thought, hey, I'll just trace this. This is the right size, but make it a little longer for his jacket. That didn't work because whenever I went to put the sleeves on that I made, it was too tight to go around to actually be able to put his arm in. So I went back to the drawing board. I took that same pattern I had just created and I just made it a lot bigger and made the armholes bigger, and that seemed to work. However, I still needed a little more space between the shoulders, but because I knew his back wouldn't be showing at this point, I just kind of pulled it around and left it as that. So for his outfit, you can use whatever fabric you have on hand, honestly, but I use flour sack towels. I have just like a random package of them that I like to use for anytime I need like a cheap fabric or something to use. You can use pieces of canvas or drop cloth, drop cloth, or like felt or old t-shirts, whatever you have, use what you have. So I use this and I love it because I knew it would fray really bad because it's such a thin material and he's like a little, you know, Walking Dead. So I went ahead and did his jacket outline, tried that on him, and then I did lose part of this video because this project took very long, so I ran out of space on my phone. But basically all I did was hold the fabric up to his arm, wrap it around to see how wide I needed to make it with a little overlap so that I could use hot glue to make a seam. I don't sew, don't ask me to sew, but let me tell you, hot glue, it hasn't failed me yet. So that's what I did, and then I just cut it down to the length that he needed, leaving a little extra so that I can put it inside. So if, let's say, the whole of the jacket, put it inside so it has something to glue to without shortening the arm too long. So after I cut that pattern out, I wrapped it around a pencil and I put a strip of hot glue and then I just pressed it down. That way it didn't stick to the other side and it still had an opening. However, if you did get anything to stick, you can just stick that pencil back through and break the seal, and that worked really well for me. Now to put it onto the jacket, I did the same thing. I took the end of it. So I used the hem part of the towel as his sleeve because he has those big baggy sleeves. So I used that, and then the other side I just put a ring of hot glue and I put it into the armhole, and then I just pushed it to where it would seal everything. I did have to do like the top and then the side and then the other side, and just kept putting the pencil through to make sure it wasn't sealing closed. And then I repeated that same process for the other arm, and that worked really well for me. So I hope that makes sense because that's not something I'm super comfortable with, so I don't know if I can actually get my words to translate what I was doing in the video. I don't know. You can ask me in the comments if you have any questions. I'd be happy to help. From there, I made him some pants. I just took the previous pattern from the shirt that was too small and I wrapped it around his waistline and hot glued it together, cut up the back and just wrapped it around his legs. Because he's meant to be like frail and just like messy because he's dug out of a grave, I knew that it didn't matter if his clothes looked messy and crazy because that's what your end goal would be for him. So I just cut it, hot glued them, and then I got some of my paint and I did like a dry brush all over his outfit, the part that would be black or dark gray. I actually did dark gray. And I just did that all over, real messy and just kind of all over the place, leaving the cuffs of his sleeves white. And then I went ahead and cut a separate piece of fabric and I glued it just on his neckline as a faux shirt, so it's just kind of in the front. And then I took strips of that same fabric, glued it around to give him those nice big frills that he has in the front of his shirt, and then also his little I don't know what they are, but the little detail on the front of his jacket as well. And then I took a dark brown paint and I dry brushed all over him just to kind of dirty him up a little bit and make him not look so fresh and new. I'm so happy with the way that that turned out. I'm actually a little shocked that I was able to pull that off. So if you guys have any questions about that step, please let me know. I will do my very best to help with it. I'm sure there are many of you who can do so much better than what I did or make it so much easier for yourselves. But again, I don't make clothing. I don't do any of that. So I was just doing what was working for me. Once I was done with Billy, I was ready to move back to the girls. So I wanted to do a cloak for them or like a hood or something to really make their outfits kind of pop off, because I was too worried about like for instance, for Winnie's outfit, she kind of looks like Ariel. She has red hair, the colors and everything. But I was scared that I was going to run out of time. So I'm really glad that I decided to go ahead and take a step backwards and go ahead and finish this and give them the detail, because I think those little details, though, they take a lot more of your time and they kind of can set you back if it's not something you you have time for. That's what's going to make or break your project. So just make sure, like I said, you give yourself plenty of time on your projects and you take a step back, take a breather, and give yourself the allotted time you need to actually create what you're wanting. So for their cloaks, I took the corners of the towel. I folded the corner down because I'm making like a faux hood to make it look like, the hood's like draping over their backs. So I folded that down, I just wrapped it around the doll where I want it to meet in the front, and I just cut it off at the bottom. I didn't try to do this in a specific, really clean way. I want them to look a little more edgy and not so planned. And then I did that for all three of them. After that, I was ready to go ahead and paint them the same as I did the clothes before. I did use my heat gun to help dry them, or else it was going to take forever. And that's when I decided I wanted to go ahead and take the time to change the colors I had on Sarah's dress. So I whipped up this like pinkish, purple, maroonish, I don't even know what to call it. I just mixed a whole bunch of paints until I was happy with it. And I'm so glad that I did. So I repainted her skirt, did her cloak in that new color, and then I was ready to add some embellishment and detail on their costumes or their wardrobe. So I went ahead and did the plaid for Mary, just because I wasn't sure what else to do, and I think that's why she ended up having plaid in all the toys, because what do you do? I don't know. So I took the color from Sarah's dress and I went ahead and did the plaid on her skirt and on her cloak. And then for Winnie, I did a gold paint pen that I also got from the Dollar Tree. And I just drew random little squiggles as an embellishment on her. And then I did go ahead and trace out some of the detail on her skirt. So once those were done, I just hung those up to dry and I was ready to start on their faces. Now I have been putting this off because I knew it would take a long time, and that's what's so important, and I didn't want to mess it up, so I wanted to make sure that I was not feeling rushed, that oh my gosh, I still have to do all this extra stuff. So I did all the extra stuff first, that way at the end I could really stop, slow down, and concentrate on their faces. Now, I don't want this video to be 2 hours long, so I'm going to kind of speed you through. I just did the whites of their eyes, and then their pupils, I just did the colors that were best for each one of the dolls. And so blonde for Sarah, dark brown for Mary, black for Billy, and then like a brighter brown for Winnie. And then I was ready to do their lips. So for Winnie, she had that iconic look. I had to make sure I nailed that, because if I mess it up, it's not going to look like her. So I just took my time with my little shaky hand at this point because I was so nervous, and did her lips. I did Sarah's lips. And then when I got to Mary, obviously I had to make sure, that little thing, had to get that on there. So I just went ahead and painted that on to where I thought it looked good, and I painted it in white into her mouth so it looked like her teeth were showing. And then obviously for Mr. Billy, I had to sew his mouth shut. So for him, it's 2 lines in the middle and then X's on the side of the mouth. He was the easiest one to do. It's just a bunch of lines. And then I was ready to go back and do more detail. So I did their eyes. I did, for Billy, I did a couple like marks to kind of rough his face up a little bit. I dry brushed dirt all over him. I did their beauty marks. I ended up adding a couple little teeth hanging out of Winnie's mouth. I love how they turned out. If you have any questions on these steps, because I did kind of like really condense it because it did take me quite a bit of time, I'm more than happy to give you any suggestions or clarify something that maybe I didn't show well. But I did, you know, outlines of their eyes, their eyelashes, their eyebrows. Do you know how hard it is to paint eyebrows? Whew, let me tell you. But I think they look super cute. So now it's time to finish up and add their cloaks. I did this just by folding over the back, wrapping it around to where I was happy with it, and hot gluing it down. And so I just did it where it looked best on each doll. So like for Sarah, her little shoulders are showing because, you know, she's a little scandalous. So after I got those hot glued on, I found some little buttons just to embellish the front that I thought matched their outfits well, just to add a little bit more detail to it. And then I made some broomsticks for them. Well, broomsticks. A broomstick, a mop, and a vacuum. So for the broomstick, I'm just cutting off some stems that I have left over from some florals that were not used. And I cut those down. For Winnie's broomstick, I kind of bent it to make it kind of little, you know, wonky and weird. And then I took just some of the jute or the twine that they have at Dollar Tree, cut it down to the length that I wanted it to be, unwound it, pulled it apart so it'll come out down. It will come out to 3 strands. From those strands, I twist it again against, you know, the way it naturally twists, and I put my fingernail in the middle and I pulled it apart to make it more frayed, and I just carefully stacked that up into a pile. Then I took hot glue on the end of that broomstick that I had made, and I just rolled it through the little frays that I just made, or little straw pieces that I just made for my broom. And used my little silicone thimbles to push it down so I didn't burn myself. And after that, once I get it all, you know, you can do that, and then if it didn't pick up all of it, or if it's not sticking well, just do another layer of hot glue and another layer of the jute twine. And then I tied one around it just to make sure everything's nice and secure. So I just did a tie, I hot glued that and then folded them over themselves. That way it won't come untied and it kind of just blends away with it. I did the exact same process on the mop for Sarah, only I used white jute instead of the brown. And then for Winnie, for Mary, I took those same makeup sponges that I was using to dab their faces earlier, and I painted them up, and I cut one down and I met them up so the top of the, what am I trying to say? So I had one standing up, and then I cut the front off of, or the top off of the other and put it underneath to make it look like a vacuum. I used part of that same floral stem, cut that down to size, and then bent that to look like a handle. And I used one of the strands from the jute that I had already untwisted, and I put that on the back to make it look like the little cord was coming out, and I think it turned out super cute. I did paint them and then not like the color, so then I repainted it, and I'm very happy with how each of their flying instruments have turned out. And then it was time to go ahead and prep the scene. So I have these trays that I thrifted a couple months ago, and I just never got around to doing them up because I couldn't really find a good inspiration for them. And I think that that was supposed to happen because it is the perfect size for what I need to make the shadow box that I was originally wanting to do. So I pulled out some of this little foam, I don't know what it's actually called, but it's like the little foam paper that you can get. I don't know if you can get it at Dollar Tree or Walmart. It's not expensive at all. Any craft store will have it in stock. And I just used the stuff that I had. It didn't matter the color because I was going to be painting it. And I just pulled up a picture of Billy's grave and freehanded drawing it. I drew one side, and because I wanted them to match, I cut it out and just folded it over and traced it so that both sides would be the same. And then I took that, I traced it again and made a second one because I wanted it to be a little bit thicker. And then I painted it. So I just painted it gray, and then I painted on the image. It's not exact, but the best that I could do freehanding to look like Billy's grave. And then I took that other part of the sponge that I had cut off for the vacuum, and I painted that gray because I was going to use that to make when I go to put his grave into the scene, I don't want it flat on the back. I want it to kind of look 3D and come out at you. So I just painted that up in case you would ever be able to see behind it. But I will get to that a little bit later. I went ahead and took the tray, cleaned it up, painted the background black because I'm going to do a night scene. And I'm just going to kind of take you guys through that here quickly and briefly explain what I'm doing for you. So I'm going to make some stars just by dipping my brush in excess water and white and flick it all over. Then I'm going to paint my ground. I'm just using multiple colors of brown. I think I used 4 different colors and a fan brush, and I'm just kind of putting it on there, making it solid, and then swooping it up to make it look like grass. And I do that all over with different colors and different tones to give it some dimension. And once I'm happy with that, I'm going to move on to doing my trees. Trees are lines. They're just not straight lines. So I'm using multiple colors again for dimension and just drawing lines all the way up and adding them until I'm happy with one brush, and then doing it again with a smaller brush to do different sizes and kind of give it the dimension. And then I just added a little bit of highlight onto the limbs and things so that it again gives it some more texture and dimension. And then I'm going to do my little graveyard scene. Same thing. If you want dimension in your pictures, you just have to use multiple colors. So I used a light gray, dark gray, black, and white, and just painted them until I was happy with the different highlights. The moon is just a round circle sponge. I put it down, and then I did go back off camera and give it a nice good circle, like cleaned up the edges to make it look really good. Then once that was done, I just set it aside and let it dry. So once all the pieces are assembled and put together, everything's dry, it's time to complete the scene. So I have some Spanish moss or grass that I got from the Dollar Tree. I just hot glued that onto the bottom to cover up and kind of give it more of a 3D effect. I did that all the way across and up a little onto my sides so that you can't see where I stopped painting. And then from there, I added Billy's grave. I just hot glued that sponge into the spot that I wanted it to, and then hot glued his grave on top of it. As you can see, it kind of lifts it off of the back a little bit, and it just makes it a little more 3D and pop out at you. And then I took a little bit more of that Spanish grass and covered it to make sure you couldn't see the bottom, so it didn't look like it was floating. Then I was ready to attach Billy, so I kind of just played around with his layout to see where I wanted to put him, and then I put the girls up there to kind of just make sure everything looked good and cohesive and fit well. And then I hot glued Billy down. I put a lot of hot glue on him to make sure that he doesn't leave or fall off or anything. So I just held him there until he was nice and secure. And then it was time to figure out how to make them look like they were flying. So as you can see, I kind of have their capes kind of like they look like they're moving. I just did that by bending it in a way that looked good to me. And then I played around with the placement of their brooms and flying utensils to see where they actually looked good with you still being able to see them. And then I just hot glued everything into place. Just took my time. You want to pay attention to things like, okay, well, in the scene, Winnie's here, Sarah's here, Mary's here. Those things you don't want to overlook if you're going to do something like this, just because it's so engraved into our brains that people will know, and it might look a little off if you have them kind of switched around. So those are just the things that I tried to pay attention to. But I'm so excited about this project. I absolutely love how it turned out. I didn't really know where to go fully. I just knew I really wanted to make these dolls. It's kind of all the rage right now to take Dollar Tree dolls and turn them into something else, and I just wanted to try my hand at it because I knew it would be challenging and something new. So please, please, please let me know in the comments below what you think about this project. Are you going to give it a try? What would you do differently? like comments about how I could do something better. I'm happy to hear all of that. What would you do differently? If you are a returning viewer, thank you so much. I'm so happy to have you here. I appreciate you more than you'll ever know. If you're new and want to see what we have going on next, go ahead and hit the subscription button. I would love to have you join our little crafting community, and I'm going to take you guys in for a closer look. I'll see you next time.